Do you have a family member or know someone who is currently locked up for an extended period of time due to drugs or quote unquote the war on drugs? Well, a recent New York Times article has stated that the Department of Justice has been illegally holding people of color in prison due to the war on drugs. It stated that President Obama even admitted that a lot of the sentences were unjust and just not right. And he has been praised lately for his clemency of, I believe it was 46 or 47 people who was wrongfully incarcerated for those number of years. But there are tens of thousands more people that the president can set free just with the stroke of his pen. The article gives the example of Ezell Gilbert. He is one of the people that President Obama uses clemency power on. But to give you a background on his story, he was sentenced to 25 years for having, I think, at least 50 grams of crack and with the intent to distribute and possession. So the judge even said that it was too harsh, but due to the mandatory sentencing laws, he had to give it to him. So a year later, Gilbert files a petition because he saw that it was something unlawful about one of his other convictions, so he shouldn't have even received that much time. Well, the court ruled against him, and then 10 years later, in another court case, it was over. The Supreme Court ruled pretty much stating that Gilbert was right in his case. So he got a public defender, and they filed for his immediate release. But the Department of Justice argued that even though his sentence may have been illegal, that he still should serve out his time because a prisoner shouldn't get 2 times to file a petition. Now, how crazy and idiotic does that sound? So, to make a long story short, the judge said, no, this is America. That is not the law. We're going to set him free. The guy got out of jail, was doing fine, stayed out of trouble. A year later, the same court with 3 different judges upheld the original ruling saying that, okay, let's bring him back to jail to serve out his time because pretty much he shouldn't get 2 times to file a petition. And that's when several years later, which was here recently, President Obama uses clemency power. But here to discuss this today with me is the founder and executive director of the Center of Church and Prison Incorporated, Rev George Walters. How you doing today, Rev Walters?
I'm fine, very well, thank you.
All right, being an advocate to end mass incarceration, what are your thoughts on this very disturbing New York Times article?
Well, first of all, let's be realistic. Mass incarceration in the United States is a big problem, okay? It's time we begin to define it as a humanitarian crisis because you've got a lot of people who are incarcerated, especially for nonviolent offenses. And what we are beginning to see is the cumulative consequences affecting a large portion of Americans that just makes it difficult for them to mobilize, for them to experience some form of economic mobilization or some economic well-being, sort of satisfaction. It's difficult for them to get a job. It's difficult for them to get housing. It's difficult for them to get a loan. It's difficult for some of them to go to school. And thank God the Pell Grant has been restored, so to speak. But mass incarceration is a problem.
It's a huge problem, and it's also a business as prisons has become privatized, which brings me to the fact for the death of Michael Brown, his anniversary, Dr. Cornel West came to St. Louis, and him and a bunch of other people went to jail to highlight injustice. Now, has that move or has that strategy played its course since mass incarceration is profitable now?
Well, mass incarceration, it's an economic enterprise in America. It's used as a means of job creation. It's used as a means of wealth acquisition and accumulation for certain communities and neighborhoods. Now, people ought to remember that, or have they ever wondered, so to speak, that close to 90% of those who are incarcerated across America are taken out of the urban cities of America. And most of the prisons, close to 90% of the prisons, are built in suburban America. So then you begin to realize is that prison then becomes a means of revitalizing deindustrialized America. Okay? So take for instance in 2010, two of the biggest private corporations in America, GEO and CCA, they made close to $3 billion. $3 billion. All on the backs of poor blacks, Hispanics, and poor whites. You see, because these major corporations, they've got stocks on Wall Street. So prisoners are economic units. Prisoners are economic units. And they have been used. They have been used. Not necessarily because of the crime they've committed, not necessarily because of punishment, but they have been used as economic units to put money in the pockets of big corporations and communities across America. So these are the very existential and humanitarian crisis that mass incarceration kind of reflects and shows all over the United States.
And we know that President Barack Obama has admittedly said that is a lot of people who are in prison that are, that is a lot of people who are in prison wrongfully. He has admitted that fact. And he has pardoned over 40 or 50 people, but it's still tens of thousands of people who are wrongfully in prison. So we know that with the stroke of his pen, he can free these people. So how do we hold him and his Department of Justice accountable for this, and where do we go from here?
I think there are certain things that are cropping up, and we need to take advantage of them. And so what we are doing is very important as well. People need to realize that Obama is the first president to have ever visited a prison in the United States. He went to Oklahoma. Okay, the very first sitting president to come face to face with the reality of incarceration. Okay, and then he's talking about granting clemency, and he's granted clemency to some people. But now the conversation has turned to ending mandatory minimums, because the organizing factors, the organizing principles of mass incarceration is the war on drugs. Okay, the war on drugs. And what fuel the war on drugs are the sentencing policies like mandatory minimums and 3 strikes. These particular sentencing policies have affected minority communities disproportionately, and as a result of which you have a lot of minority men and women incarcerated in the U.S. penal system. So with Obama talking about criminal justice reform, we also see, for the first time, we see Republicans and Democrats are talking about the need for criminal justice reform, which is very good. But we feel that with the limited time that Obama has in office, it is important that people begin to hold his feet to the fire, sort of, to remind him of these things before he gets out of office. It's important for us to remind him of his promises. You see, he made a major speech, gave a major speech a couple of weeks ago in Philadelphia to the NAACP annual convention. And that was a powerful speech. However, it is important for us to hold him to it and say, look, we need to see criminal justice reform strategically, smart on crime. And so we are talking about our conference, we're talking about mass educate, don't mass incarcerate. Because we feel that America is cutting herself short by incarcerating more than 2 million people. Those are the brains of the United States of America. But they are behind bars for a lot of them nonviolent drug offenses.
Exactly, for non-violent offenses. So how can we come together as a society to evoke change? Because we know that the Black Lives Matter movement has stopped speeches, notably of Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, but should they go and hold President Obama's feet to the fire like, hey, yes, these are presidential candidates, but you are in office now, and since you're on your way out, we must hold your feet to the fire. You must do all that you can to change this.
Of course, I agree with you. we as the community, and so it's the Black Lives Movement has cropped up in response to police brutality, but underlining the underlining argument, the underlining impetus for the Black Lives Movement is this what I call an existential frustration and disturbance with respect to criminal justice reform, okay, and its consequences in the Black community. The law enforcement reflected in the high rate of incarceration of Black men and now Black women, Black juveniles. You see, so Black Lives Movement is not only about, I believe it's not only about police brutality, but it's the cumulative angst, the cumulative disturbance of what's happening in the American criminal justice system, law enforcement, and its targeting of minority Black communities. You see, so those are the angst, those are the depth, frustration that are associated with the Black Lives Movement. And so the whole argument with respect to where do we go, what do we do? Yes, there is the need for us to focus on those who are in office, Obama, but then those who are also vying for political offices. It's important for us to hear their platform, to know what they're going to say with respect to criminal justice reform, with respect to law enforcement. Because what we see now, like the great legal analyst William Stuntz argue that the American criminal justice system has now been reduced to what he's called discretionary law enforcement. Discretionary law enforcement. So what is missing is this objectivity. This objectivity, but you have an increase in discretionary judgment, in discretionary sentencing purely based on race. You see, and these are the very angst, the issues that affects a lot of people, that makes a lot of people begin to distrust and find lack of confidence with police system, with the criminal justice system. So there is a truth in it that those who are coming into office by vying for political offices, vying for presidential offices, it is important we hear their platform so we can hold them, so to speak, to the fire, hold them to their promises, you see, because mass incarceration is really affecting the community. Okay, some of the consequences are the distortion of lives, the destruction of family structure, the destruction of the community, increase in dysfunction of family structure, increase in concentrated forms of poverty, increase in mental illnesses, increase in all kinds of dysfunctional structures in the community. So it's a humanitarian crisis that's going on. And some people may say, look, it doesn't affect me. Yes, it doesn't affect you, but what affects the community ultimately affects everyone, you see. But these are the very impetus that underlines the Black Lives Movement, that underlines a lot of frustration associated with the criminal justice system.
Well, I thank you all that you do on the front line of being an advocate to end mass incarceration, and I thank you so much for your time, and I would like to give you the last word.
Well, so what we are doing, and we'd like to invite all of our listeners. My name is Rev Walters. I'm the head of the Center for Church and Prison. The Center for Church and Prison is a resource and a research organization, and our website is churchandprison.org. We are hosting a major conference called 2015 Conference on Ending Mass Incarceration and the School to Prison Pipeline, under the theme Mass Educate, Don't Mass Incarcerate. People should know the United States has 5% of the world's population, but 25% of the world's incarcerated population, with over 7.4 million people caught in the criminal justice system and over 20 million people with criminal records, which makes it difficult for them to have jobs. This conference, one, focuses on advocacy, creating the awareness and pushing for transformation in sentencing policy into mandatory minimum 3 strikes. It also talks about educational campaign that people need to be informed, and then also direct intervention in the lives of those who are coming out of prison and those who are already in prison. We have a responsibility. So this conference brings a lot of absolutely wonderful, phenomenal resources, practitioners and intellectuals and people who have been there. But it's a wonderful resource conference, and we are asking you to register for this conference. Our website is churchandprison.org. The conference is this week from the 10th of September to the 12th of September in Boston at Congregation Lion of Judah. Your presence will be very, very important, and your participation, your voice is very important to ending mass incarceration in school to prison pipeline. And just not to take much time, the school to prison pipeline, people should realize that it's informed by policies and zero tolerance policies, which includes the criminalization of school disciplines, and it highly disproportionately affects minority black students in the public school system. It's the early introduction of minority students into the criminal justice system, which is a travesty when public schools premises are being used as means of incarceration and criminalization. You need to raise your voice. We need to raise our voices. So this conference is a resource conference that brings practitioners, intellectuals, criminal justice reform advocates, and analysts for us to talk about this issue. And so we look forward to seeing you again. Our website is churchandprison.org. We look forward to seeing you. We look forward to you being a part, because your voice is very important.
Thank you so much, Reverend. And I really hope you all partake in these activities so we all can come together to end mass incarceration, because it affects not only our families or the people we know, but it affects our community. So I hope you enjoyed this segment of Your Black World News. Until next time, my friend, be blessed and be encouraged.